Hi everyone. Hopefully you can see me here. Trying to find out where I can see the comments, but I'll be starting here in about 1 minute. Okay, so let's start. Hey Heather, thank you for joining. Just wanted to see everyone, make sure everyone can see me there. Perfect. Okay, so let's start. Welcome to Navigate Home's Facebook Live program, where each week we have a new professional provide their expertise on a specific topic related to educating seniors. Navigate Home is a trusted group of individuals here in Rochester that has dedicated themselves to serving the senior community. We currently go live every Tuesday at noon and every Thursday at 7 p.m. My name is Dominic Garcia, and I am a fiduciary advisor with Rochester Wealth Strategies. So over the last week, I received a few questions regarding topics related to Social Security, Medicare, life insurance, legacy planning, and managing the finances of a parent. As such, I thought I would do my best to hit on these individually. If you happen to have any questions during our session, please feel free to comment or private message me, and I'll try to respond soon after the meeting. So let's get started here. First question, what happens to our Social Security benefits if a spouse passes away? Well, the simple answer is you actually take over the higher spouse's benefit. So let's say one spouse has a benefit of $3,000 per month. He passes away. The surviving spouse has a benefit of $2,000 per month. What that means is that the surviving spouse's benefit will no longer apply, and you actually get to take over the $3,000 for the decedent. You do not get both, so you only get one or the other. Let's see, a lot of people come to me and they say, Dominic, I don't think I'm going to live that long. My parents maybe only lived until their 60s, maybe early 70s. Maybe I'm only going to live to about 70, 75 years old. Well, one thing to understand, it's not necessarily about how long you are going to live, but more importantly, how long at least you or your spouse will live. So if you told me that, Dominic, both me and my spouse are not going to live past 75, then it might make sense to actually collect at 62. But if you think at least one of you will live until your 80s or 90s, then it definitely makes sense to hold off as long as possible. And it makes sense more for the person who has had the higher income or higher benefit throughout the years. So maybe the person with the smaller benefit, they collect at 62, while the person with the higher benefit, maybe they hold off on collecting until, say, 67 or the age of 70. So some food for thought there. Second question, when looking at Medicare options, should I consider Medicare Supplement, also known as Medigap, or Medicare Advantage? So what I can tell you is that Medicare Supplement is typically what 2/3 of Americans usually choose. Probably the main benefit of that is significantly more access. So you can use any provider that accepts Medicare. There's no need to worry about networks or referrals. A thing to consider about Medicare Supplement is that the premiums are typically higher, usually about $100 to $140 a month. However, the only out-of-pocket that you're going to incur is the Medicare Part B deductible of about $198 for the entire year. So Medicare supplement is great for people who have to travel a lot throughout the U.S. or for those who have a second home in another state, maybe Florida, Arizona. It's good to have that flexibility. Medicare supplement also may be better for those with underlying health conditions or those who simply want peace of mind knowing that they will be covered in almost any scenario. So the only cons to Medicare supplement is, of course, the slightly higher premiums. And Medicare supplement does not offer drug coverage. You can purchase this for roughly about $15 a month separate, but that is something you would have to purchase on the side. So the second option is Medicare Advantage. So typically 1/3 of Americans tend to choose Medicare Advantage. In this case, you would typically only be allowed your in-network providers, and it must require a referral to see specialists, so your doctor choices will be a lot more limited. However, the premiums are going to be lower. You can find plans out there as close to $0 a month, anywhere as high as $130 a month. However, the out-of-pocket here is going to be significantly higher. So typically your out-of-pocket will range from $4,000 a year or maybe from $4,000 to about $6,500 a year. And as a reminder, Medicare was only $185 for the entire year. So there's a lot of incentives for Medicare Advantage. They try to bring you in with the option of a gym membership. Some plans might include one eye exam per year or 2 dental cleanings per year. So, it's not a bad option for healthier individuals that are typically on a limited income. So the way I look at it, it's typically best to choose the plan that, quite frankly, covers the health events that are most important to you. So the question is, do you want a plan that will cover stroke, heart attack, cancer, or do you want a plan with a nice gym membership? So, usually the peace of mind tend to go with the Medicare supplement. The ones that are looking to save a few bucks and are a little bit healthier tend to go with the Medicare Advantage. So hopefully that answers that question. The third question here is, should I keep my life insurance policy? Over the last few years, my premium has increased substantially. So insurance can actually be a great financial planning tool. However, I tend to prefer insurance, mainly term insurance, for those who are truly supporting other family members. So obviously, if someone passes away and their other family members need the extra income and money to live off of, then a term policy would make the most sense. And typically it's for people who are the ages prior to retirement. Usually if you can retire, you typically don't need insurance anymore. So when it comes to permanent policies, such as whole life, variable life, universal life, the numbers tend not to work out unless you're facing some near-term health issues. So in general, if you are under the age of 70 and you feel that you have about 15 years left in life, then it might be worth considering the option of surrendering the policy. However, when you compare keeping the money in your own name and investing the funds, you will usually net significantly more down the road than ultimately incurring the costs and premiums associated with insurance as a whole. So if you do not feel comfortable surrendering the policy, it may definitely be worth looking at replacing the policy. I run into a lot of people who have had their insurance policies for 30, 40 years. The problem with that is the mortality tables changed in 2001, and then they changed again in 2017. So what that means is people are living longer. And if people are living longer, the insurance companies have to jump in and say, okay, well, for what we were giving you before, we can now reduce the premiums. Or maybe by having the same premium, you can actually get a much higher death benefit. So definitely worth looking into if your health is still great. But if you are running into health issues, just remember you will have to get evaluated again. So something to pay attention to. So on the other side of the spectrum, if someone feels that they may only have about 10 years left, it would probably make sense for them to maintain their policies. One thing to understand here is you may have the option to no longer add to the policy. So I run into a lot of policies where they built up enough cash value over the years where the premiums can simply come from that and pay for the policy itself. So obviously you want to do this as long as you're not putting the policy at risk of lapsing. So there's no need to add more money to a policy than what is required to keep it in force. Many times I ran into the scenario where someone thinks that, okay, well, if I continue to put more money in, I'll increase the cash value. But you have to remember, in most policies, you only get the death benefit. You don't get the cash value and the death benefit. You only typically get the death benefit. So no need to put more in than what you need. Question 4, what types of things can I do to enhance the legacy for my beneficiaries? So, well, it depends on the age group. If you want to pass money to children or grandchildren, maybe under the age of 18, then a great option might be contributing to a 529 plan. And fortunately, one of the best plans out there is the one here in Michigan. It's called the Michigan Education Savings Program, also known as the MESP 529 plan. What's great about this plan is you get a state tax deduction for the first $10,000 that you contribute each year, and now the beneficiaries will have money that they can use for tuition, books, room and board, all on a tax-free basis. They also have the freedom with this plan to choose any college, so they don't necessarily have to stay in Michigan. So definitely a great option to maybe put away some money for those grandkids each year. Another option to enhance your legacy for older beneficiaries is considering a Roth conversion strategy. So ultimately, this is the process of moving money from your IRA to a Roth IRA. It's a great way to give tax-free money to your beneficiaries. However, you will be paying taxes now, so it's usually only suggested if you know that you're not going to need the money for yourself, and it typically only makes sense if you are in a lower tax bracket, ideally lower than the beneficiary that you're going to be giving the money to. So, and then the 5th question here is, my elder parent is no longer paying attention to her investments or the viability of her finances. How can I step in and help? Well, holistic family planning is an important part of what we do here. As a fiduciary, it is my job not only to be there for you, but also important to be there for those around you. So the toughest part naturally is, of course, having the conversation with your parent. And many times it's better to sit down with an advisor. That way you avoid your personal opinions and it brings the advice in from a third party. So when it comes to actually executing these type of options, you have to realize that most firms do have paperwork that will allow you to be the power of attorney over your parents' accounts. And your parents could limit the amount of flexibility they give you. For example, maybe you can only give authority to make trades on the account, but you do not have the authority to disperse money from the account. So there's a lot of things you can at least start incorporating into the finances of a parent, and that's to name a few. The also big thing to understand that I run into is many times when you obtain a portfolio or take a look at a portfolio from someone who's in their 80s and 90s, you can tell it hasn't been changed in a very long time. And what I mean by that is that it's typically made up of a lot of individual stocks. So if you pay attention to our industry, you'll realize that you're hard-pressed to find any stockbrokers out there. If you look back in the 80s and 90s, almost everyone was a stockbroker. But in today's world, we just don't see that as much because when it comes to actual financial planning and creating stability in a portfolio, stocks are a very hard investment product to do that with. So, I will say sometimes it does make sense to maintain individual stocks in an elder's portfolio because if there is a huge gain on the portfolio and they pass away, you get a step up in cost basis. So what that means is upon their passing, that gain from say $10,000, $100,000, that $90,000 gain, you no longer have to pay those capital gains tax when you inherit that money. On the other hand, If there is a loss in a lot of the stocks within their portfolios, then you typically want to take advantage of that sooner than later, because you will lose that if you just inherit it and not sell those stocks prior to the passing. So if you can sell some of those stocks at a loss, you can actually reduce the parents' taxes significantly prior to their passing. So great for tax efficiency. Let's see here. What else can I go over? What else to make sure everything. Okay. Yeah, the other thing is naturally you don't want to put a parent's portfolio at risk. You want to make sure that money is there not only to support their needs, of course, nursing home, assisted living, in-home care, whatever it may be, but what about for the beneficiary? You want to make sure that the money's not invested in, say, a General Motors stock, for which we saw in 2008, 2009 go bankrupt. So you want to make sure that it is creating stability and it is there not only for you but for the loved ones down the road. So let's see if we have any new questions here. Okay, so I don't see any new questions. Maybe they're private message me, for which I would take a look at after. But that is actually it for today. I wanted to keep it kind of short and sweet for you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. On Thursday at 7 o'clock, our speaker, Valerie McBain from Century 21, will be talking about getting your home ready to list and how buying and selling during the COVID quarantine can work to keep all parties safe. Kelsey Florick from Caring Transitions may also be joining the call with her. So I hope I was able to help with some of the questions that I received. As a reminder, my name is Dominic Garcia with Rochester Wealth Strategies. Thank you again for your time. And if there's any further questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Our office number is 248-963-2977. Once again, 248-963-2977. Stay safe and God bless. Oh, actually, I got one last question before I let you guys go. Thank you, Kim. Is it worth buying long-term care insurance? That is actually a very good question. Good news, long-term care insurance is perhaps a little bit better than what it was in the past. And what I mean by that is in the past you would have to pay premiums, kind of like home and auto insurance, and you would never know whether or not you're going to truly benefit from the policy. Now they actually have policies where you can put a lump sum in. So say $50,000, $100,000, and the insurance company will give you about $300,000 of long-term benefits to be used on day one. So there is catches here, and it's probably the reason why I'm not a huge fan of it. The average person who uses long-term care insurance uses it for 2.44 years. So let's just call it about 2.5 years. So let's say you put in 100, they give you $300,000 worth of benefit, and you're only going to use it for 2.44 years. The problem is the $300,000 has to be used over a minimum of typically 5 to 6 years. So based on those numbers, you may only use half of that $300,000 benefit. So now you have to do the math. Well, let's see, if I keep the money in my own name, that $100,000, and I just let it grow in the market, it's probably going to take less than 10 years to get to $150,000. And so as a result, you're typically better off keeping money in your own name. You'll be able to control it more, use it for whatever you need down the road, and you're probably going to have more left over because you're not going to deal with the costs associated with all the insurance behind the scenes. In addition to that, many times you have to prove receipts for these policies. So, ideally you might have a loved one take care of you, but they're not a licensed nurse. And so maybe you can't use that $300 benefit for them. Some policies you can, but most of them you cannot. So these are a few of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of long-term care insurance. But if you are looking into it, typically the sweet spot is roughly between the ages of 50, 55, probably say at most 60. As you get past there, you'd be surprised. The policies might cost you about $1,000 a month, and they tend to get very expensive. So hopefully that answers your question, Kim. Thank you everyone for joining. I really appreciate this, and we hope to get together again soon. Take care, guys.